Hey, it's Professor Shoemaker, and I want to show you a little bit about how to deal with formulas in Excel. I've got the example file that I downloaded from Blackboard, and like any file that comes from the internet, Excel is initially afraid that the file will have viruses and so on, so it puts it in a mode called Protected View. And in order to work with any of these worksheets you download from Blackboard, you're going to have to click on Enable Editing. And when you do that, basically the worksheet opens and closes again, or closes and reopens, and then you can do normal processing on it. A couple of things. Sometimes I will put a comment on a cell on a worksheet that you'll download for in class, and I also put comments in cells when I turn back your homework. Now this one has a comment on it, and you can tell because it's got the little red triangle in the upper right hand corner of the cell. When I hover over it, the comment pops up, but look, it's cut off because there were more words than will show in the window. So how do I see the whole comment? Well, if I try to slide over onto it, it just appears. So what you need to do is right-click on the cell and then select Edit Comment. This might be cut off below the bottom of my window here. Select Edit Comment. It will pop up, and you get handles on it, and you can drag it out. And all this comment does explains what an overhead cost is, so you know what the value in that cell means. So a couple of things about auditing worksheets. But how do I get rid of this comment? Right-click and select Show or Hide Comment, and it will hide comment, and it will go away like that. Okay, notice that this worksheet has some errors in it. And what we want to do is figure out how to deal with these errors. Well, let me show you a couple of ways of doing this. One is, if you click it down, it says invalid name error, but this cell just says revenue minus cost, and if I hover over it, it's just pointing at the revenue and cost cells. This cell isn't really the error. The error, in fact, is in this cell over here, where I took the selling price each and I added an X behind it so that Excel wouldn't be able to find that name in the worksheet. Selling price is there. Take a look at this cell just above it. But this one, I intentionally misspelled it. I want to show you, and we're going to do a lot of work on the Formulas tab here, about how to deal with errors. And one of the items in this Formulas tab is the section over here called Formula Auditing. And one of them is error finding. So let's do error checking. And what it does, it scans the worksheet looking for cells that have errors, and it found this cell F10. That's this cell right here. And it says, shows you the contents of the cell, and it says invalid name here. The formula contains unrecognized text. I can get additional help on this error by clicking on this button, and I'll get a pop-up window that is Excel help, and it gives more details about this particular kind of error. I can also show the calculation steps, and we'll see a little bit more of this, but let's take a quick look at this. It says, okay, this cell has in it 6,500 times the selling price each X. And when I click on Evaluate, it will try to figure out what the value is for the underlying part of the formula. So I click on Evaluate, and it says pound name question mark. It means it couldn't figure out how to evaluate that name. We already knew that. So I want to fix this error. I'll click Edit Formula in Formula Bar. I'll just come up here and get rid of the X to spell it correctly. Click on Resume, and it says the error checking is complete for the entire sheet. That's because when I fixed this error and got a good value in it, this cell over here, which uses the revenue value here, no longer has the error as well. Just to reemphasize that, if I put the X back, I will get an error here, and also in any cell that uses this error, that is a dependent of this cell. So let's fix that. Now, one of the things I mentioned is a dependency. And up here, notice I've clicked on this net profit cell. I can click on Trace Dependence, or excuse me, Trace Precedence. That is, which cells contribute to this cell here. So when I click on it and Trace Precedence, it's really drawing two blue arrows here. One from F10 and another one from G10. So those are the cells that contribute to this cell here. I'm going to turn the arrows off. Let's come over here and look at this total revenue column here. Trace its precedence. It uses the number sold and the selling price each to calculate the total revenue. Let's clear the errors. Let's see what the precedents are for overhead costs. Notice that this is just a hard-coded number here. So I'm going to trace precedence, and I'll get a message. Requires an active cell containing a formula, which includes valid references. Well, this cell doesn't have any references. Total cost, on the other hand, has 3 precedents to it. I'll click on those. And it uses overhead costs, number sold, and cost to make one widget. Hey, let's walk through the evaluation of this cell. So I'll click on Evaluate Formula, and look what it has. Cost to make one widget times number sold plus overhead costs. This is underscored here, the cost to make one widget. That means when I click on Evaluate, it will figure out the value for that part of the formula. So I click on Evaluate. 455. That's because it came from this cell up here, C5. Now, number sold is underscored. I evaluate that. 2,500. That came out of C6. Then overhead cost, well, the next thing to evaluate is this multiplication. 455 times 2,500. I click on that. I get a 1,137,500. Now I have to add to that the overhead cost, so I evaluate overhead cost. It's 500,000. That's from C9. And then finally, it'll do the final evaluation, and I get 1,637,500. So I can start over again if I want to walk through the evaluation again, or I can just click on Close. That kind of evaluate is a really good way of seeing how the more complex formulas that we're going to be using are actually processed by Excel. Let's remove the arrows here. Okay, just a couple other points on this business of precedence and dependence. Let's take this cell here, widgets sold incrementally. If I click on dependence, it will point to the cells that use this $1,500, and that's all these cells right here. If I keep clicking on dependence, it will march through the other cells that are using this cell in the worksheet until I finally get no more changes. So this widget sold is used here and then all the way across. In other words, the value in this cell affects almost every calculation on the worksheet. I can remove arrows to go back. Let's see about the cost to make one widget. Where is it used in the worksheet? So I'll trace dependence. And it's used all the way over here in the cost. If I click on dependence again, then it's used in net profit. Notice I also have an arrow coming down here that says it's used in total cost and then in net profit. If I click on dependence one more time, no more formulas refer to the active cell. So I found the whole thing. This is very handy for getting an understanding of how worksheets cells depend upon one another. They sort of build a network of dependencies. One more time, let's check precedence on this net profit down here, for example. So I'll check precedence. It's dependent upon revenue and cost. Check precedence again. Those values are in turn used cost to make one widget and all of this, and it uses this 15,500 here. Let's do some more of precedence. Now it shows it uses the widget sold increment, and then finally all the way up the column says that this 15,005 down here is dependent upon every value above it. So it shows you how the connections work inside of a worksheet, and especially when you're looking at a new homework problem or a new Excel spreadsheet that you haven't seen before, being able to see how the cells connect to one another gives you a quick overview of a worksheet and helps in getting your arms around it.